The morning started like any other for Hyunwoo. He woke up at 4 in the morning, ate a simple breakfast of rice and soup, and walked down to the harbor where his fishing boat waited. The sea was calm that day, and the stars above looked brighter than usual. He thought nothing of it as he started the engine and headed out into the dark waters off the coast of Busan. By sunrise, everything had changed. The first sign was the shadow. A massive shadow that covered the entire sky, blocking out the sun. Hyunwoo looked up and saw something that made his hands freeze on the wheel. Ships. Thousands of them. They hung in the sky like dark clouds, each one larger than the biggest building he had ever seen. They made no sound. They just floated there, waiting. His radio crackled to life. Every frequency was broadcasting the same message in Korean, then in English, then in languages he had never heard before. The voice was strange, mechanical, and cold. Inhabitants of Earth, you are now part of the Velkari Empire. Resistance is futile. Surrender your weapons and prepare for integration. Hyunwoo stared at the radio, then back at the ships above. He did what any reasonable person would do. He pulled out his phone and started recording. Across the world, people were doing the same thing. In Seoul, Jia was in her laboratory at the university when the lights flickered. Her quantum computer began displaying readings that made no sense. Energy signatures were appearing all around the planet, massive ones unlike anything in her database. She ran outside with her colleagues and saw the ships hanging above the city like giant metal moons. People were not screaming. They were not running in panic. Instead, they were taking pictures, posting on social media, calling their friends and family. The general mood was confusion mixed with excitement. First contact with aliens was happening, and humanity was treating it like a festival. Commander Velthron stood on the bridge of his flagship and watched the planet below with growing confusion. In his 3,000 years of life, he had conquered 300 worlds. Every single time, the pattern was the same. The fleet arrives. The message is broadcast. The inhabitants panic. Some surrender immediately. Others fight. Within days, the world belongs to the Velkari Empire. But Earth was different. His sensors showed millions of electronic signals bouncing around the planet. The inhabitants were communicating frantically, but not about evacuation or defense. They were sharing images of his fleet, making jokes, creating what his translation software called memes. One image showed his flagship with text that said, "Aliens came to Earth and all I got was this lousy invasion." "Commander," his second officer said, "should we proceed with the landing force?" Velthran nodded slowly. Perhaps the inhabitants were simply too primitive to understand the danger they were in. A show of force would correct that. Taeyang received the call at 6 in the morning. As a special forces operator, he was trained for many scenarios. Alien invasion was not one of them. But orders were orders. He reported to the Emergency Command Center in Seoul, where military officials and government leaders were gathering. "What's the situation?" he asked his commanding officer, unknown. "The aliens are real. They're here, and they're demanding surrender." The officer looked tired. "We're preparing first contact protocols, but honestly, we have no idea what we're doing." On the screens around the room, news channels showed the alien ships from every angle. Scientists were being interviewed. Religious leaders were making statements. Everyone had an opinion, but no one had answers. Then the first landing began. The Velkari chose the Gobi Desert for their initial deployment. Far from major cities, flat terrain, easy to secure, 3,000 soldiers descended in drop pods, their armor gleaming in the sunlight. They were prepared for anything. Weapons, defenses, desperate attacks. What they got was sand and silence. The soldiers established a perimeter and began setting up their base. Within an hour, the first one collapsed. Then another. Then 10 more. By the 4th hour, half the landing force was on the ground, writhing in pain. Their medical officers couldn't find the cause. No wounds, no poison. No disease. The soldiers were simply failing. Velthron watched the reports with growing alarm. He ordered an immediate evacuation. The dropships returned and pulled the soldiers back to orbit. Every single one was sick. Some were hallucinating. Others couldn't move. The medical bay was overwhelmed. "What happened down there?" Velthron demanded. His chief medical officer looked terrified. "I don't know, Commander. Their bodies are shutting down at the cellular level. It's as if the planet itself is poisonous to us." Back on Earth, Hyunwoo's video had gone viral. 40 million views in 6 hours. He was being called by news stations, but he ignored them all. He was more interested in what his fish finder was showing: strange readings in the water, energy patterns that moved and shifted like living things. Gia was seeing the same thing in her lab. Her instruments were detecting quantum anomalies all around the planet, not just around the alien ships, but everywhere. In the air, in the water, in the ground. The reading suggested something impossible. Earth's entire biosphere was saturated with quantum-entangled particles that shouldn't exist in nature. She ran the calculations 3 times. Each time the results were the same. Earth was sitting at the intersection of multiple quantum probability fields. The planet existed in a state of constant flux, where multiple realities overlapped and collapsed thousands of times per second, and humans had evolved in this chaos. She grabbed her phone and called every physicist she knew. Within hours, research teams around the world were confirming her findings. Earth was not normal. It had never been normal. Humanity had spent its entire existence adapting to an environment that was fundamentally unstable at the quantum level. In orbit, Velthron received the final medical report. The conclusion was clear and terrifying. The Velkari could not survive on Earth. Something in the planet's atmosphere, or perhaps in its fundamental nature, was lethal to them. Not in a quick, clean way, but in a slow, agonizing process that destroyed both body and mind. He composed a message to the High Council on the Velkari homeworld, 12,000 light-years away. His hand shook as he typed the words. "We have encountered an anomaly. Earth is impossible. The inhabitants are somehow immune to conditions that would kill our soldiers within hours. Request immediate withdrawal and quarantine protocols. This world cannot be conquered." He sent the message and looked at the planet below. Beautiful, blue and green and white, completely ordinary in appearance. Yet it had defeated the Velkari Empire without firing a single shot. For the first time in 3,000 years, Commander Velthron felt something he had forgotten existed: fear. 3 weeks had passed since the Velkari fleet arrived, and they still hung in orbit like dark monuments to their own failure. Commander Velthron refused to leave. His pride, and the pride of his empire, would not allow him to admit defeat to a species that had barely reached its own moon. But he also refused to send any more soldiers to the surface. The quarantine zone remained in effect. 50,000 warships surrounding a planet they could not touch. Minji worked in a Level 4 biosafety laboratory in Seoul. She had been studying the Velkari soldiers that had been recovered from the desert. Well, not recovered exactly. The aliens had left them behind in their panicked retreat. 3 soldiers, still alive but barely conscious, had been taken to secure facilities around the world. Minji had been given access to one of them. The alien lay on a medical bed behind thick glass. Its breathing was labored and its eyes moved randomly, seeing things that were not there. Minji had taken samples of its blood, tissue, and cellular structure. What she found made no sense according to everything she had learned in medical school. The Velkari's cells were dying, but not from any pathogen. They were being torn apart at the molecular level by something in Earth's environment. When she looked closer, she saw quantum particles appearing spontaneously inside the cells, disrupting their function. It was as if reality itself was attacking the alien at the smallest possible level. She wrote her report and sent it to the International Research Committee. Within hours, she received a call from someone she had never expected to hear from. "Dr. Minji, this is Subcommander Thexrin of the Velkari research vessel. I'm transmitting on a secure channel. Please do not alert your authorities." Minji froze. An alien was calling her directly. "How did you get this number?" "We have been monitoring your communications. I apologize for the intrusion, but I must speak with someone who understands what is happening." The voice was synthesized but carried a tone of desperation. "Your research is correct. Earth is killing us, but not with weapons or disease. It is something far stranger." "Why are you contacting me?" Minji asked. "Because my people are afraid to admit what we have found. They would rather retreat and pretend Earth does not exist than face the truth. But I need to understand, how do you survive in such conditions?" Minji thought about it. "We don't know any other conditions. We evolved here. Maybe we're adapted to it." There was a long pause. "That should be impossible. What you call quantum chaos would prevent complex life from forming. Yet you exist. You thrive. My scans show that every human being on your planet exists in a state of quantum superposition. You are simultaneously in multiple probability states at once." "What does that mean?" Minji asked. It means you should not be able to have coherent consciousness. Yet you do. Somehow your species has turned an environment that would drive us insane into your natural habitat. Across the city, Daeho sat in an emergency meeting of the United Nations Security Council. As the Secretary General, he had been tasked with establishing formal diplomatic contact with the Velkari. But the aliens were not responding to any official channels. They maintained their blockade, silent and watching. We need to know their intentions, the American ambassador said. Are they planning another attack? Intelligence suggests they are afraid, the Russian ambassador replied. Our satellites show their ships maintaining a distance of at least 500 kilometers from our atmosphere. They are not acting like conquerors. Daeho looked at the reports in front of him. Scientists from every nation were sharing data, and the picture was becoming clearer. Earth was not a normal planet. Something about its fundamental nature made it toxic to alien life. But was that true for all aliens or just the Velkari? His phone buzzed. A message from his science advisor. The Velkari have agreed to a meeting in space. They will not come closer to Earth. The meeting took place on a neutral station hastily constructed at the edge of the moon's orbit. Daeho led a delegation of scientists and diplomats. They traveled in a spacecraft borrowed from the Velkari themselves, since human ships could not make the journey fast enough. When they arrived, they were met by Commander Velthran. The alien was tall, nearly 3 meters, with skin that shimmered like oil on water. His eyes were large and dark, and his face showed emotions that Daeho could almost recognize. Fear, confusion, shame. Thank you for meeting with us, Daeho said through a translator. Velthran nodded slowly. I will be direct. My empire has conquered 847 worlds. We have never failed. Until now, he paused. Earth is not a planet we can take. It is not a planet any species from stable space can take. Stable space? Gia asked. She had been brought as part of the science team. Velthran gestured to a screen and images appeared. Star maps showing regions of the galaxy in different colors. The galaxy is not uniform. Most regions exist in what we call stable quantum states. Reality is predictable. Cause and effect follow logical patterns. Life evolves in these regions and spreads through them. He pointed to a small area on the map, colored in violent red and orange. Then there are regions like yours. Quantum unstable zones, places where reality itself fluctuates. We believe such regions could not support complex life. We were wrong. So humans are anomalies? Daeho asked. You are impossibilities, Velthran said quietly. Your bodies, your minds, your entire existence is adapted to chaos that would destroy us. When my soldiers entered your atmosphere, they experienced what we can only describe as reality breaking down. Time moved incorrectly. Their thoughts fragmented. Their bodies could not maintain coherence. Gia leaned forward. But we feel nothing like that. Earth feels normal to us. Because you are children of chaos, Velthran said. You cannot imagine what stability feels like, just as we cannot imagine surviving what you call normal. The meeting lasted for hours. By the end, a strange understanding had formed. Earth was not being invaded because Earth could not be invaded. The Velkari would maintain their blockade not to conquer but to study, to try and understand how humanity existed at all. Back on Earth, news of the meeting spread quickly. Humanity was safe, not because of weapons or defenses, but because they were fundamentally incompatible with the rest of the galaxy. It was both comforting and deeply unsettling. Yunwu watched the news from his boat. He had returned to fishing, though now he often saw alien ships passing overhead. Sometimes he waved at them. He wondered if they waved back. In her lab, Minji continued her conversations with Thexrin. The Velkari scientist was obsessed with understanding humanity. He sent her data about other species, about the history of the galaxy, about the nature of quantum physics as understood by civilizations millions of years old. One night, Thexrin told her something that changed everything. Other empires have heard about Earth. They are coming to see if the reports are true. Some are curious, some are afraid, and some, he paused, some believe Earth should be destroyed before humanity can spread your chaos to the rest of the galaxy. Minji felt her blood run cold. Are we in danger? I do not know, Thexrin admitted. But the galaxy has been stable for a very long time. Your existence threatens that stability, not through intention but through simply being what you are. Above Earth, more ships began to arrive. Not Velkari this time, but vessels from a dozen different empires. They came to study the impossible planet, the world that broke the Velkari, the world that should not exist. And in the darkness between stars, something else was stirring. An empire that had fought the Velkari for millennia had heard the news. They specialized in manipulating reality itself. They believed they could succeed where the Velkari had failed. They were coming to test themselves against Earth, and they were coming soon. Yuna was 12 years old and probably the best hacker in Seoul. She had learned programming from her uncle and had quickly moved beyond simple code to breaking into systems that should have been impossible to access. When the aliens arrived, she saw an opportunity. While governments and scientists were having formal meetings, Yuna was doing something more direct. She was listening to the aliens talk to each other. It took her 3 weeks to crack the Velkari encryption. Their systems were advanced, but they followed logical patterns. Patterns she could understand and exploit. When she finally broke through, what she heard made her hands shake. The Velkari were terrified. Not just cautious or concerned. Actually terrified. She recorded everything and compiled it into a file. Command officers discussing nightmares. Medical reports describing soldiers who could no longer distinguish between past, present, and future. Scientists arguing about whether Earth was a natural phenomenon or a weapon designed by some ancient civilization. But the worst part was the personal logs. Velkari soldiers describing what they experienced on Earth's surface. They talked about seeing multiple versions of themselves, about feeling their consciousness split and merge, about the overwhelming sensation that reality itself was breathing, pulsing, alive. One soldier had written, "I looked at my hands and saw them in 1,000 different positions at once. I was reaching for my weapon and I was already dead, and I was back on the ship and I was never born. All at the same time, all equally real. I screamed, but I heard the scream before I made it." Yuna copied everything to a secure drive and sent it anonymously to every major news organization. Within 24 hours, the world knew. The Velkari were not just physically unable to survive on Earth, the planet was doing something to their minds. Sang-hoon was a professor of philosophy at Seoul National University. He had spent his career studying human nature, consciousness, and the meaning of existence. When he read Yuna's leaked files, something clicked in his mind. He began pulling together research from multiple fields: biology, physics, history, psychology. He wrote a paper titled Humanity's Advantage: Evolution in Quantum Chaos. In it, he argued that everything about human history made sense in a new context. Humanity's creativity, their adaptability, their seemingly irrational hope in hopeless situations. These were not just cultural traits. They were evolutionary advantages developed in an environment where reality itself was unstable. Humans did not just accept uncertainty, they thrived in it. Every human being lived their entire life navigating quantum possibilities without even realizing it. When someone made a decision, they were unconsciously collapsing probability waves. When they imagined the future, they were actually perceiving genuine quantum possibilities. The paper went viral. Scientists around the world began testing his theories, and they found he was right. On Jeju Island, a farmer named Byung-ho made a discovery that would change everything. He was plowing his field when his tractor hit something hard. Digging down, he found a crystal formation unlike anything he had seen before. It was perfectly geometric, but the geometry was wrong. The angles did not add up correctly. Looking at it too long made his eyes hurt. He called the local university, and within days, scientists had descended on his farm. Gia arrived with her team and set up equipment around the crystal. What they found was impossible. The crystal was a physical record of quantum collapse events. Somehow the process of quantum possibilities collapsing into definite reality had left a mark in the physical world. The crystal contained evidence of thousands of different timelines, all compressed into one object. "This shouldn't exist," Gia said, staring at her readings. "This is like finding a fossil of time itself." They found more crystals buried around the island. Then reports started coming in from around the world. Similar formations in Brazil, in Australia, in Canada. Everywhere humans had lived for thousands of years, these quantum fossils existed. The implications were staggering. Earth was not just in a quantum unstable region. It was actively generating quantum events at a rate that should be impossible, and humanity had been living in this storm for their entire existence. In orbit, Commander Velthran received his orders from the High Council. High Counselor Xanthera herself had sent the message. He played it for his senior staff. Xanthera appeared on the screen, her form dignified despite the obvious stress in her expression. Commander Velthran, the Council has deliberated for many cycles regarding the Earth situation. We have consulted with the oldest members of our species. We have reviewed records dating back 200,000 years. Never in our history have we encountered anything like this. She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice carried the weight of a civilization facing something beyond its understanding. Earth represents a fundamental challenge to everything we know about the universe. The inhabitants should not exist. Their world should not be possible. Yet both persist. Effective immediately, all Velkari forces are ordered to establish a 50 light-year exclusion zone around the Earth system. No ship is to enter this zone without explicit Council authorization. We are classifying Earth as a Category Omega anomaly, the highest possible threat level. Velthran felt his heart sink. Category Omega. In Velkari classification, it meant something that could threaten the existence of the Empire itself. Furthermore, Xanthera continued, we are issuing a galaxy-wide warning to all known civilizations. Earth is to be avoided. Contact with its inhabitants is to be minimized. We are admitting what no Velkari leader has said in 200 millennia. We have found something we cannot defeat. The message ended. Velthran looked at his officers. Begin withdrawal procedures. We are leaving Earth space. What about the ships from other empires? His second officer asked. They are still gathering around the planet. Let them learn what we learned, Velthran said quietly. Perhaps they will succeed where we failed, but I do not think so. News of the Velkari withdrawal spread quickly. Humanity celebrated, though many wondered if the celebration was premature. Other alien species were still arriving. 12 different empires now had ships in Earth's solar system. Most were just observing, but some were preparing for something more. Thexrin sent a final message to Minji before his ship departed. There is something you should know. The galaxy is watching your world with fear and fascination. Some species see you as a miracle. Others see you as an abomination. And some see you as a resource to be studied and exploited. What do you see us as? Minji asked. There was a long pause. I see you as proof that the universe is far stranger than we ever imagined. And I see you as a warning. Power and stability do not guarantee understanding. We Velkari conquered galaxies, but we never truly understood the nature of existence. You humans, trapped on one small planet, have been forced to understand it every day of your lives. The transmission ended. The Velkari fleet began its slow withdrawal, massive ships turning away from Earth and accelerating toward the edge of the solar system. But even as they left, new ships were arriving. Sleek vessels with designs that hurt to look at. They belonged to the Torvan Conclave, an empire that specialized in reality manipulation. They had heard that Earth broke the Velkari. They did not believe a primitive world could stand against their technology. They were wrong, but they would not learn that truth easily. And the lesson would cost both sides dearly. On Earth, humanity watched the skies and prepared for whatever came next. They did not have weapons that could match the aliens. They did not have technology that could compete. But they had something else. Something that had been with them since the first human looked up at the stars and wondered what might be out there. They had hope. Irrational, impossible, beautiful hope. The kind of hope that only exists in a species that has spent its entire existence navigating chaos and somehow finding meaning in it. The kind of hope that terrified the galaxy. 3 years had passed since the Velkari left. Earth had changed in ways both visible and invisible. The skyline of every major city now included alien structures, carefully designed habitats where non-human visitors could live, while their bodies slowly adapted to Earth's quantum chaos. The process was dangerous. Many did not survive, but those who did found themselves changed in profound ways. Jinsol managed the largest of these settlements in Antarctica. 50,000 aliens from 17 different species lived there, isolated from major human populations but not abandoned. He walked through the facility every day, checking on the residents, documenting their changes, trying to understand what was happening to them. The pattern was consistent across all species. The first weeks were the hardest. Visitors experienced severe disorientation, hallucinations, and physical illness. Their bodies struggled to maintain coherence in an environment where quantum uncertainty was the default state. Many gave up and left. Some died despite the best medical care. But those who survived the first month began to change. Their blood chemistry altered. Their neural patterns evolved. Most significantly, they developed something humans took for granted. They could imagine multiple futures simultaneously. They could hold contradictory ideas in their minds without experiencing cognitive dissonance. They became, in a sense, more human. Dr. Jinsol, one of his patients, called out. It was a Velkari named Krixmar, one of the few of his species brave enough to attempt the adaptation. He was old, even by Velkari standards, and the process was killing him slowly, but he refused to leave. How are you feeling today? Jinsol asked. I am dying, Krixmar said matter-of-factly, but I'm also understanding. For the first time in my 5,000 years of life, I am truly understanding. Understanding what? Everything, nothing, both. Krixmar made a sound that might have been a laugh. You humans speak of art, of creativity, of inspiration. We Velkari never truly grasped these concepts. We could replicate them technically, but we did not feel them. Now I do. It is terrifying and beautiful. Halfway across the world, Juan prepared for a journey no human had attempted before. He was an astronaut, trained by both Korean and American space agencies, and he had been selected for a historic mission. He would travel to the Velkari homeworld as Earth's first ambassador to another civilization. The journey would take 6 months, even with Velkari faster-than-light technology. More importantly, he would be leaving Earth's quantum field for the first time in his life. Scientists were not sure what would happen to a human in stable space. Would his consciousness fragment like the Velkari experienced on Earth? Would he adapt? Would he survive? Are you ready? The mission director asked. Juan looked at the Velkari ship that would carry him across the galaxy. As ready as I can be. The first week of travel was manageable. Earth's quantum influence extended further than anyone had realized, and Juan felt relatively normal. But as they moved deeper into stable space, he began to feel something strange. The universe felt flat, dead, predictable. Every action had a clear, singular consequence. Time moved in a perfect linear fashion. Cause and effect were absolute. It should have been comforting. Instead, it felt like suffocating. By the second week, Juan was experiencing what the medical team called stability sickness. He could not make decisions. Every choice seemed equally meaningless in a universe where outcomes were predetermined by physics. His mind, evolved to navigate quantum uncertainty, was struggling to function in an environment where uncertainty did not exist. The Velkari crew watched him with a mixture of sympathy and fascination. They were seeing firsthand what humans needed to survive. Not just food, water, and air, but genuine possibility. Quantum chaos was not just Earth's environment. It was fundamental to human consciousness. Juan spent hours in meditation trying to adapt. Slowly, painfully, he found techniques that helped. He would imagine multiple possibilities even when only one existed. He would force his mind to consider alternate outcomes even though physics made them impossible. It was like learning to breathe manually, consciously doing something that should be automatic. When he finally arrived at the Velkari homeworld, he was a changed person. Thinner, quieter, but also aware of something profound. Humans and Velkari were not just different species. They were fundamentally incompatible forms of consciousness, evolved in opposite extremes of the universe's possibility. Elder Krixmar met him there. The old Velkari had sent a message months ago requesting this meeting. He was dying, too weak to remain on Earth, but he wanted to speak with Juan before the end. They met in a garden, one of the few places on the Velkari homeworld that felt alive to Juan. Even then, it was too ordered, too perfect. Every plant grew in exactly the pattern it was supposed to. Nothing surprised. Nothing changed unexpectedly. Thank you for coming, Krixmar said. His voice was weak but clear. I had to, Juan replied. Your people saved my life on the journey here, and your people saved mine with their mere existence. Krixmar gestured for Juan to sit. I must tell you something. A secret the Velkari have kept for millions of years. He told Juan the story. Long ago, the Velkari had not lived in stable space. They had evolved in a region similar to Earth where quantum chaos was the norm. But they had hated it. The uncertainty, the lack of control, the constant feeling that reality was not solid, so they left. They use primitive technology to migrate to stable regions of the galaxy, and over millions of years they adapted. They became creatures of order and predictability. They built an empire on the principle that the universe could be understood and controlled. We gained so much, Krixmar said. Longevity, technology, power. We conquered galaxies. But we lost something essential. We lost the ability to truly change, to evolve, to hope for something we cannot yet predict. Why are you telling me this? Juan asked. Because humanity is at a crossroads. You have the ability to spread beyond Earth now. You can use our technology to reach other worlds. But will you stay human when you do? Will you maintain your chaos, or will you seek our stability? Juan thought about his journey, about the suffocating feeling of stable space, about how his mind had struggled and adapted. I think we will find a middle path. We will spread, but we will carry Earth's chaos with us. That is what I hope to hear, Krixmar said, and that is what terrifies the rest of the galaxy. Back on Earth, Subin was dealing with a crisis. She was the security chief for the Sol settlement, and tensions were rising among the alien residents. Different species had different theories about what Earth represented. Some had formed cults, worshipping the quantum chaos as a divine force. Others saw it as a disease that needed to be contained. The worst were those who believed Earth should be destroyed. They argued that if humanity ever left their planet and spread their quantum nature to other worlds, it would destroy the stability the galaxy had maintained for billions of years. Subin had already stopped 3 attempted attacks on human cities. Small groups of extremists trying to use stolen technology to damage Earth's biosphere. They failed not because of Earth's defenses, but because their technology simply did not work properly in quantum chaos. But the attempts were escalating. We need more security, she told the council. These people are desperate. Fear makes people dangerous. We cannot imprison them for being afraid, one of the council members replied. No, but we can prepare for what comes next. And something was coming. Subin could feel it. The reports from deep space confirmed her instincts. A massive fleet was approaching Earth, not Valkyrie, not any of the species that had come peacefully. This was something else. The Torvan conclave had arrived. Their ships materialized at the edge of the solar system, hundreds of them, each one bristling with weapons and reality manipulation technology. They had heard the stories about Earth. They did not believe them. The Valkyrie were old and weak, they said. The Torvan were different. They had mastered the manipulation of space-time itself. They could stabilize any quantum field, no matter how chaotic. They were going to prove it by conquering Earth. Juan received the news while still on the Valkyrie homeworld. He rushed to the communication center and sent an urgent message back to Earth, but it would take weeks to arrive. By then, everything would be decided. Krixmar found him in the communication center, staring at the screens. So it begins, the old Valkyrie said. Can they do it? Juan asked. Can the Torvan stabilize Earth? Krixmar was quiet for a long moment. If they succeed, it will destroy humanity. Your species cannot survive in stable space. You will become like us. Or worse, then we have to stop them. How? You have no weapons that can match the Torvan. You have no technology that can compete. Juan looked at the old alien. But we have something they do not understand. We have spent our entire existence in chaos. They have spent theirs in order. Who do you think knows how to fight in an uncertain universe? Krixmar made that sound that was almost a laugh. I hope you are right. For all our sakes. Admiral Jungi stood on the bridge of the ESS Unity, Earth's first proper warship. It was a hastily assembled vessel, built using a combination of human engineering and alien technology donated by friendly species. Compared to the Torvan fleet approaching Earth, it was pathetic. The Unity had a crew of 200. The Torvan had brought 500 ships, each one capable of destroying a planet. Sir, they are broadcasting a message, the communications officer said. Jungi nodded. Let's hear it. The voice that came through was cold and mechanical. Inhabitants of Earth, we are the Torvan conclave. We have heard of your world's anomaly. We do not believe the Valkyrie reports. They are a weak and declining species. We are not. Stand down and allow us to approach your planet. We will prove that no world is beyond our reach. Jungi took a deep breath. Transmit our response to the Torvan conclave. This is Admiral Jungi of the Earth Space Defense Force. You are not welcome here. Turn back now. There was a pause. Then laughter came through the channel. You have 1 ship. We have 500. You have no chance. We will approach Earth now. Do not interfere. The Torvan fleet began to move forward. On Earth, Haywan worked frantically in the diplomatic center. She was trying to contact every friendly alien species, calling in every favor, asking for help. Most were sympathetic but refused. They would not risk war with the Torvan. But then an unexpected message came through. It was Commander Velthran, Ambassador Haywan. The Velkari High Council is debating whether to intervene. High Counselor Xanthera wishes to speak with you directly. Minutes later, Xanthera appeared on the screen. She looked older than Haywan remembered. Ambassador, my people are afraid. The Torvan are our ancient enemies. If they succeed in conquering Earth, they will use your planet as a staging ground to attack Velkari space. Then help us, Haywan said simply. You do not understand what you are asking. Sending our ships into Earth space means sending our people to suffer. They will experience what you call quantum chaos. Many will not survive the mental trauma. You are asking us to face our greatest fear to save you. Haywan met her gaze. Yes, I am. Because 3 years ago, you could have destroyed Earth when you realized you could not conquer it. You could have eliminated the threat we represent. But you did not. You showed mercy. Now we need you to show courage. Xanthera closed her eyes. When she opened them, there was something new in her expression. Resolve. The Velkari fleet will come. But understand this, human. We are not doing this just for you. We are doing this because the Torvan must not be allowed to succeed. The balance of the galaxy depends on Earth remaining unconquered. As the Velkari fleet began its journey to Earth, the Torvan had already reached the outer atmosphere. Their reality manipulation technology activated. Massive beams of energy pouring down onto the planet. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. Everywhere the beams touched, the quantum chaos began to fade. Reality stabilized. For the first time in Earth's history, the planet experienced what the rest of the galaxy called normal space, and humans began to collapse. In Seoul, Minji fell to her knees in her laboratory. The room spun around her, but not from dizziness. Everything felt flat, dead. She could not think clearly. It was like trying to breathe underwater. Around the city, thousands of people were experiencing the same thing. Emergency services were overwhelmed. Seo Jun felt it too, but differently. He was Jia's son, born 3 years ago after first contact. He was part of the first generation of humans born knowing aliens existed, and he was special in ways no one had fully understood until this moment. While adults collapsed, Seo Jun stood up in his kindergarten classroom. He looked at the sky and felt the quantum chaos being drained away. He also felt something else, a connection to other children like him. All over the world, the new generation was waking up to abilities they did not know they had. They could see probability, not metaphorically, actually see it. The branching paths of reality were visible to them like roads on a map, and more importantly, they could choose which paths became real. In orbit, Jungi watched helplessly as the Torvan bombardment continued. His ship's weapons were useless against their shields. Earth was dying and there was nothing he could do. Then the Velkari arrived. 5,000 warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of Earth's atmosphere. They immediately engaged the Torvan fleet, weapons fire lighting up the darkness of space. But more importantly, they flew directly into the quantum field, shields down, accepting the chaos. On the Velkari flagship, Velthran felt reality break apart around him. Time stuttered. Space folded. His mind fractured into 1,000 possible versions of himself. It was agony, but he had volunteered for this. So had every member of his crew. They knew what it would cost. All ships, he broadcast, his voice distorted by the quantum interference. Target the Torvan reality stabilizers. Do not stop firing until they are destroyed or we are. The battle that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had seen. Velkari ships fighting through conditions that drove their crews insane. Torvan vessels trying to maintain their bombardment while defending against an enemy that should not be able to fight at all. On Earth, Seo Jun and the other children acted. They did not plan it. They did not discuss it. They simply knew what to do. Across the planet, thousands of young minds reached out and touched the quantum field. They pushed back against the Torvan stabilization beams. Reality itself became a battlefield. The Torvan tried to impose order. The children imposed chaos. The quantum field pulsed and rippled like water disturbed by stones. And slowly, impossibly, the chaos won. The Torvan stabilization technology began to fail. but not in the way anyone expected. The quantum chaos did not just return. It, reflected back onto the Torvin ships. Reality manipulation technology that was designed to control space-time suddenly found itself caught in a feedback loop. Archon Velmora, commander of the Torvin fleet, felt her consciousness split. She was on her ship and she was not. She was alive and dead, young and old, victorious and defeated, all at once. All equally real, she screamed, and 500 commanders across the Torvin fleet screamed with her. They had come to conquer chaos. Instead, chaos conquered them. Retreat, Velmora managed to order. All ships retreat! Get us out of this system! The Torvin fleet pulled back in disarray, their formations broken, their crews traumatized. They fled Earth space as quickly as their damaged ships could carry them. The Velkari stopped firing. Velthron sat in his command chair shaking. Half his crew was unconscious. The other half were barely functional. But they had done it. They had faced their fear and survived. On Earth, the quantum chaos returned in full force. Adults who had collapsed began to wake up, gasping and confused. The children, exhausted from their effort, fell asleep where they stood. Haywan stood in the diplomatic center, tears running down her face. They had survived. Earth had survived. And the Velkari, the empire that had terrified humanity 3 years ago, had saved them. The aftermath took months to process. The Velkari fleet limped back to their territory. Many ships so damaged by the quantum exposure they had to be abandoned. Velthron submitted his report to the High Council. Over 2,000 Velkari had died in the battle. 3,000 more would never fully recover from the mental trauma, but they had proven something important. The Velkari could face their fear, and in doing so, they had taken the first step toward changing what they were. News of the battle spread across the galaxy. The Torvin conclave, humiliated by their defeat, withdrew from galactic politics. Earth was declared a sovereign quantum zone by every major power. A treaty was signed. No species would attempt to conquer or stabilize Earth. The planet would remain what it had always been, a pocket of chaos in an ordered universe. 50 years later, things had changed in ways both subtle and profound. Quantum pilgrimage had become common. Aliens came to Earth knowing the risks, seeking transformation. Some adapted, many did not survive. But those who did return to their homeworlds changed, carrying with them a fragment of Earth's impossible nature. The Velkari Empire was slowly declining. Not through conquest or war, but through choice. More and more Velkari were choosing to live on Earth, accepting the painful transformation rather than maintaining their ancient power. Xanthera herself had eventually made the journey. She died there on Earth, but she died happy in a way no Velkari had been happy for millions of years. Hyunwoo was an old man now. His hair was white, his back bent from decades of work on his fishing boat. He still went out every morning, though his grandchildren begged him to retire. The sea was calm today and the sky above was full of ships. Alien vessels maintaining the exclusion zone, watching over Earth like nervous guardians protecting something they did not fully understand. He waved at a passing ship. A light blinked back. He smiled. Somewhere in the galaxy, species that had dominated star systems for millions of years looked toward Earth and felt something they had not felt in eons. Fear, wonder, hope. They had conquered galaxies. They had bent reality to their will. They had achieved what they thought was perfection. But they could not conquer Earth. They could not tame the quantum chaos. They could not defeat a species that had evolved in conditions that should have made life impossible. And deep down, in the parts of themselves they tried not to examine, they understood why. Earth was not a planet. It was a lesson. A reminder that the universe was far stranger, far more beautiful and far more terrifying than any empire could ever comprehend. Power built on stability alone was fragile. Control was an illusion. And sometimes the greatest strength was not the ability to dominate, but the ability to exist in uncertainty and still choose hope. The cause of their terror remained. Not humanity's weapons, not even humanity's adaptation, but humanity's existence itself, proof that chaos could achieve consciousness, that impossibility could become real, and that in a universe of infinite possibilities, some things would always remain unconquerable, not because they were too strong to defeat, but because they were too different to even fight against. Earth endured. Humanity spread slowly to other worlds, carrying their quantum nature with them, and the galaxy, ancient and ordered and set in its ways, began to change, not through conquest, not through war, but through the slow, terrifying, beautiful process of adaptation, the same process that had made humanity what they were, the same process that would, in time, remake the galaxy itself. And that, more than any weapon, was what truly terrified them.